That's crazy. Why's it gotta be this way? Seriously, I don't get it. Not one bit.
This book may be no more than dead weight to you now. Even so, I would like you to take it with you on your journey.
Gurren Lagann is without a doubt one of the greatest anime ever created. It has its issues, but as someone who loves brooding, moody, serious anime, it sits oddly high up on my list, being a raunchy, wild, ridiculous action comedy. And this is because, as we discussed over 3 parts with leadership, underneath all of that raw entertainment value, Gurren Lagann has a lot to say. While specific moments drive the truths of leadership forward, the threads connecting them are present in each and every episode, in every character, and how they interact, in their symbols and summaries. Drilling, for example, isn't just something they thought looked cool. It's the process of moving forward itself, no matter what's before you. It's pushing through into the unknown and believing it will be okay. That simple action describes Gurren Lagann itself. But there's one episode which always felt a bit disjointed to me. No, not episode 4's awful animation, that's a story for another day, but the next episode, number 5. It's one of the few standalone episodes, sending our crew on a journey which detours from the path of their main adventure before spitting them back right on track. It might be my favorite episode because it embodies one of Gurren Lagann's greatest traits: reversed logic. It takes a common belief, one typically seen as positive, and asks, but is it really? This is one I've wanted to do for a while, and although it was a bit of a rushed process if I'm honest, I'm still excited to share it today. This is a look into Gurren Lagann and tradition. I'll do a quick recap for anyone who hasn't seen the series. Feel free to use the chapters feature to skip this if you've already seen it. The anime follows Kamina and Simon, an unlikely pair of friends from an underground village who find themselves thrust into the heart of action as a giant mechanical face falls through their ceiling and reveals the sky, a sight Kamina has wanted for years. A very bold and brash man, he has to force his pseudo-younger brother Simon to jump to action as they pilot their own gunmen against this new foe and escape to the surface with Yoko, who takes them back to Littner Village, a group living on the surface constantly at war with these foes. But while there, Kamina does something they never considered. Littner Village always fought with their own weapons. Kamina took the enemies. He steals a gunman of his own, a feat they thought to be impossible, and starts his path of inspiring humanity with irrational logic. From there, they set out to find the source of their foes, strike them at the heart, and reclaim a peaceful surface for the human race. While traveling, a moment of calm was interrupted when Gurren Lagann, their mecha, falls through the ceiling of another village, Adai. Here they find a situation worse than the one they knew. Their village, Jiha, wasn't comfortable, but it was perfectly livable. They were rewarded for the work they put in to some degree, and outside of earthquakes, nothing threatened their life. And it's made a direct point that they have a good supply of food in the pig moles. Adai's enemy is invisible and opposite of their situation. Their fight is hunger. Without enough food to support a large population, they follow a custom which shocks our newfound surface dwellers. When the population reaches above 50, they randomly pull straws to determine who will be chosen by the gods and sent to salvation above, free from the chains of the life they knew. Obviously, our heroes know the reality of this situation. They're sent to a harsh wasteland to die. For the sake of the many, the few are sacrificed. Despite being shocked, Simon accepts this with a simple line:
It's just the way it is here, it's the law.
The same language the village elder used to defend the practice. Rossiu, a young boy who seems to be the elder's closest ally, seems to question his faith though. Adai has a worn-out old gunman in their village, but they see it as an idol, the face of the gods above. And here are these people from above coming down in another face god, completely rude, crass, and indecent. How does this fit with their faith? Can it really be reasoned away as a simple test of dedication from God? Rossiu is swayed by Kamina's words, the one of the group to challenge this village's custom. Actually, challenge isn't really enough. Kamina stands directly up to it, literally getting in the elder's face and declaring what he thinks is the truth. Simon sees it as exceptionally rude, and it is. Kamina has no manners whatsoever. But he has a point. This tradition is, despite being for the greater good, somewhat barbaric. People are being sent to die on the surface against gunmen things hundreds of times larger than their size. It is torture, and they believe it to be salvation. As someone who always risks a little to gain a lot, it makes no sense to Kamina, and he can't allow himself to simply back down when lives are being lost like that. And here is our topic. While it's traditionally viewed as rude to question cultural customs or traditions, how much negative consequence can we tolerate in the name of, well, tolerance? Let's start where the episode does with Kamina and Simon traveling. They are essential nomads. While they came from somewhere, it was a vague nothing representative of a specific emotion more than any real culture. They don't have traditions or customs which are sacred to them. Similarly, while their goal is one which benefits humanity, Kamina himself is very individualistic. He was spurred on not by love of humans to fight for them, but he was driven of his own desire to be something great, which eventually transforms into a care for others. It's as his statement, "Believe in the me who believes in you," transforms into "Believe in the you who believes in you," is where we see this transition complete. But the Kamina we witnessed in episode 5 isn't there yet. He's still just a guy finding his way to the world he personally wants. This goes hand in hand with his lack of tradition. Customs require a group, including commitment and dedication and devotion to others. It places something above oneself, whether that's history, family, society, or any number of things. Even if you don't think you have customs, you probably do. Seeing family for a holiday is the most common example. You may have things you'd rather do, but you do it anyway for your parents' sake, or the idea of family itself, or simply because it's normal. Adai Village is a more extreme example of this principle. These people don't find enjoyment in their customs. They're not doing these things because they bring them some immediate pleasure. They're doing them because they believe it to be right to do so. Everything they know says that's what it is. Remember, the average person here doesn't know the truth. They believe, or make themselves believe, that they are not killing someone, they are simply sending them away. Rossiu, who eventually learns the truth, shows an understanding of this displeasure being for something worthwhile. He's the only one to readily question their customs. His hostility comes from his doubt, where everyone else's comes from their confidence. This means he's always had some doubt about them. Kamina didn't instantly change his mind, but Rossiu follows these customs anyway because it is right to do so. Before we go any further into this argument, let's recap that important point. This is the individual versus the collective, the knowledgeable versus the ignorant. Kamina is coming from the perspective of an individualist without meaningful traditions of his own. He is, in a large way, ignorant and responds to these people with ignorance. But as we said, Gurren Lagann is built on reverse logic. Is ignorance sometimes good? Can it be a simplified perspective to put things into a better frame? To bring grand structures down to simple statements, and through that, reveal their truth? It may not appear so on the surface. Despite him being the hero, the episode doesn't paint Kamina in a good light for most of its run. He's a pervert, saying Yoko is only attractive with an exposed midriff, and looking under her clothing like she's some object to be lusted over and nothing more. He verbally assaults a literal child, trying to egg him into a fight against someone much more experienced and who should know better. His immediate response to being given food from people without enough for themselves is to complain for more. Simple thoughts would tell any normal person not to do these things, but he is ignorant and doesn't care. Contrast this with the people of the village. They're mild-mannered, respectful to guests even when they don't like them, generous to a fault, faithful despite a harsh life. These are all qualities we typically associate with good, upstanding people. They are admirable. But they aren't the heroes. They are powerless nobodies who we'll never see again because they don't matter. The rude man challenging them is the one we'll follow into hell if need be. Since we only know enough of the citizens to contrast them on this point, we have to assume it is the reason for this distinction. We learn that positive qualities don't always lead to positive outcomes, and that negative qualities sometimes can. By not having custom, Kamina has complete free will. He uses this to risk a small amount, his simple life in Jiha village, for a large amount, the entire surface. If you've seen my Psychopaths videos about society, which, if I can say, are some of my best work, so I really hope you will check them out, you know I'm a big fan of sliding this scale a bit away from free will for societal good. With certain restrictions, we find greater freedom. That's because freedom means the guarantee to do some things. Free will is only possibility, even if it is the possibility of everything. This is the premise of their society. They're very restrictive, viewing life with the stoic dedication that something is better than nothing. Their traditions defend this, as all traditions are, by definition, restrictive. In our basic example, even home for the holidays restricts you to a specific place, home. Traditions prevent the people following them from attempting the kind of risk Kamina did. They take guarantees over possibilities. I said this is most times good. I usually agree with it, but it's not always so. Even if these citizens ever felt they should better their society, this would go against their traditions. Maybe behind the face god there are better fishing spots with more population to choose from, more food to feed the village, but that would mean going near the god. There are possibilities with very, very low risk which could improve their lives, but they'll never be considered even when it's right before them. The best example of how an ignorant perspective can help is in the first moments we see of Adai village, our heroes face to face with the god, or in reality, the gunman. Kamina immediately moves to touch it, not even considering that it may be meaningful in some way, before being stopped by Rossiu and informed of just that. And then rather than respectfully listening, he blurts out the truth of what it is and later encourages the child to explore it himself. To him, it's not a purposeful sign of God, something to be respected and revered. It's a tool, plain and simple. His perspective is simpler, so he sees things as they are, not what they were made to be by history and custom. And it could have led them to benefit. If he was allowed to touch it to show them what it was, they would see that it could solve some of their problems. They state directly that these people don't have electricity, and at a base level, gunmen produce energy from spiral power, the force inherent to sentient life in their universe. The village could change their will into electricity, use the gunmen to try and gather more food, protect from invaders, and so on. Kamina's simple view allowed the gunmen to be something more beneficial than an idol. This is where we can see a pretty clear benefit. When we talk about risk versus reward, there is a gray area. The restrictions they live under were placed there in the name of survival. It's not really pleasant to say that, like Kamina, we should be forced to throw caution to the wind in hopes of something better. Society itself is based on guarantees over risks. This is the benefit they gain. Their tradition has a purpose. So there's a clear give and take, but Gurren Lagann presents clear as day that what's needed is always new perspectives. Being closed off and restricted without question is the aspect which leads to negative consequences. Everything which is restrictive must be questioned from time to time to evaluate if the benefit is still worth the cost. Customs are a thing of the past, but the past has changed into the present and then will change into the future. There's no guarantee that something from 100, 50, or even 10 years ago is still beneficial now. But there's a barrier to questioning, one we see in Adai village, based on another touchy subject closely related to customs: faith. As Rossiu begins to exhibit the positive quality of curiosity which could have helped better their village, he's stopped by the elder. He's told that belief is greater than curiosity, the latter is merely a tool to test the former by. Religion is essentially just tradition, but rather than history or culture, things which exist or existed, it's based in faith, the idea that certain things do exist. Because they can't be proven like, say, an artifact would with tradition, faith is susceptible to falling apart easily. It's propped up in circular logic. The village doesn't question their actions because they don't want to question them. It's exceptionally likely that reality is more harsh than what they believe. The fact that they send kids out with food even seems to recognize the truth somewhat. Does it make sense that through this shitty door and up a long dark corridor is some kind of heaven? No. But is that easier to handle than recognizing you just sent 2 children to die? Yes. When people are doing something harmful and it's clear they are doing it out of faith and as such won't question themselves, is being rude worth the cost? Kamina's questioning of them is even more important with this in mind. They aren't just operating on history, the facts of the past, they're operating on blind belief. It's something easy to question, and doing so is often called disrespectful. This exact thing happens right here.
Would you please stop berating the ways of our people? Stop insulting our customs.
When something is questionable, is it valuable? Or do we just think it is? An important distinction here is also that their harmful actions are engaged with other people. It isn't a personal decision which is being questioned, but a group one. For example, you may find fasting to be a harmful action, although not a deadly one. Someone performing this to themselves is harming no one else, and as such, is practicing their personal will, the same as Kamina always is. But when others are forced to as well, it becomes a matter worthy of question for the greater good, because there is now a greater component to that good. Here we have to wonder, are customs worth more than individual belief? Where Kamina comes from, they were kept underground despite their wishes. The elder saw that it was his duty to provide tough love to dreamers and keep them from chasing a surface that simply didn't exist. This is the mindset Kamina comes from, one like theirs, where individual belief is placed below tradition. But we see an important distinction here. In Jiha village, Kamina's belief wouldn't have hurt anyone. He was seeking to leave, an act which have cost a bit of labor but saved on food, and if he leaves, Jiha village proceeds the same, and nothing really changes except it would be even more peaceful without him. He was being restricted for no real reason, putting into perspective his statement that,
I don't get it. Not one damn bit.
in his mindset, people rise up against oppression because being held back is always bad. It's an obvious choice. Why do what you don't have to? But in Adai's case, going against societal wisdom would have group consequences. Ignoring the lottery means making more mouths to feed, and that means others would eat less, possibly even starving. Even if they decide not to feed the people who push the population over 50, they have to live with the decision of actively letting someone else die, not out of sight like with the lottery, but right before them. As kind people, because of their traditions, they likely couldn't handle this and would give in and feed them and suffer for it. We see that things are complex. It's not a black and white statement that the villagers and their elder were outright wrong, it's pointing out the ways they were wrong. They had worthy restrictions in place. We see clear as day that they are performing a utilitarian calculation of the greater good based on the knowledge and perspective they had. But they were wrong in deciding across the board there was nothing to question, that they couldn't benefit from a new perspective. This is hand in hand with why things almost seem so easy for Kamina throughout the series. He rocks up and steals a gunman easily, not because he's a miracle worker, but because it was a question nobody had ever asked. Have you ever been working on something in the way you always had, only to have someone show you a much easier way? Kamina is the guy doing that. He has no culture, but that means he can see everyone else's in a new way. Lintner Village, for example, was in a way set in its own traditions. The way they fought the gunmen was part of their culture, and they found a level of comfort in how they did it. They weren't winning, but they were surviving. And once that's found, there's a level of complacency because there's suddenly something to lose. Back to imagining what you were working on. Why didn't you yourself try another way? Because doing so means losing time. There is a clear risk which goes against the guarantee that if you keep going, it will eventually be done, even if it could be done better. Tradition is a form of this comfort. It is a barrier against the unknown. We accept things may not be the best, but they are certain. Like faith, it puts reason to what we experience, a way to cope with the reality around us. Let's look at their gunmen again and the benefit it could have brought them. Take a similar situation as a thought experiment. You find a village which is struggling to survive, but the people are kind and happy because they believe in an idol which just so happens to be made of solid gold. Money would go a long way to improving their lives in a permanent way. That night, you have the chance to steal the idol, sell it for the money they need, and give them that money. Is it the right thing to do despite their faith? Do we accept that their traditions held them back, and that with our knowledge and perspective, we should provide betterment as we know it? And does this change if we're able to leave the money and run before they've ever noticed? I ask this secondary question because I think it reveals more about the mindset not to interfere. Simon is a very meek character to begin. His only desire is to live a simple life with simple things. He wants peace and hates conflict. Is he refusing to challenge their customs because he actually believes they should be respected, or because he doesn't want the conflict of fighting another's faith? One option is quicker, simpler, easier. This is why I ask if we have a responsibility to change harmful customs, because doing so is never easy. Even when shown the truth, people will often resist and stick to their guns. The Elder does just this because his side wouldn't be a pleasant change either. It would be, for the unknown, the work of starting over and finding something new. Neither side finds pleasure in the challenge. but they at least find comfort in what they believe. At least they commit to something. But that's still not always something positive, even when the thing being committed to is. Change makes sure of that. Later in Gurren Lagann, Rossiu returns to Adai village to find the elders still there even after the surface has become home to humans once more. We see that despite the positive qualities his traditions held, like dedication, he was stuck in time through them. While everyone else is happy on the surface with a comfort like they'd never even imagined possible before, he's still in a hole in the ground. If Kamina had never come to question them, this is how they all would have stayed forever. Tradition was something good for him and imbued him with positive qualities, but things came along that were better and they went ignored. There's a sadness in this that dedication alone isn't inherently good. We have to question ourselves and what we believe as part of making sure they are what's right, no matter how meaningful they are to us and our history. Change will always come, and can we deal with change when we're wrapped up tightly in customs? Despite this antithetical statement on devotion, we can't stop there. This theme is carried into the final arc of the anime and helps put its seeming jump into perspective. 7 years after the surface has been retaken, humanity is living in lavish extravagance compared to what they knew. They've changed an exceptional amount in such a short span of time. But they lack any dedication and they've abandoned all tradition, and it leads them to becoming much worse than Adai village ever was. Gurren Lagann is the symbol of humanity retaking the surface. It was the inspiration which sparked a great and just war on humanity's behalf. It is the very reason their lives are as good as they are. But pulled along by change and focused entirely on the future and what positive things it could bring them, they discarded who they were and where they came from, and with no culture besides more, their memory became short. They felt no need for tradition because the future was new and shiny and pleasurable. So when Simon makes a simple mistake in Gurren Lagann, leading to a worsening of an already bad situation, public opinion turned against him and Gurren Lagann sharply. The man, once called Supreme Leader, is stripped of all glory, used as a weapon, and then sentenced to death, and they cheer it on. Customs have their place. Maybe you didn't enjoy every holiday visit, but it probably taught you patience. Maybe you learned something about your family that inspired you later in life to create a work of art or write an essay or anything it may be. Restriction and freedom are not opposites in morality. They are situation dependent, and the extreme end of neither is good. Customs put a reason to restriction. They serve as reminders of where we came from, what made us who we are, the heroes and villains who crafted the story of our people and places. They ground us in our own reality. They don't have to trap us in the past. Used in a healthy way, they don't distract us, they don't make us blind with faith, but they give us something to look back to so that we can build on top of that better. I think this is seen at the end of episode 5 itself. As Rossiu makes the choice to leave Adai village, the elder presents him with their holy texts and asks him to take them, even though
This book may be no more than dead weight to you now.
it's a pointless hunk of paper, and Rossiu can't read. Bringing it with him doesn't mean anything. But the elder could never read either, and he managed to make it the most meaningful thing that had ever existed in their small world. The truth here is that nothing in the past has meaning. They're just things and places and people long dead. Tradition and customs are just placing value on things which are long gone. Reason to restriction. We hold the power for what tradition is and what it means. We turn deadweight into a guide for the future, so we can make sure that it doesn't control us too. In all of its endless hope, Gurren Lagann presents us with yet another exceptionally hopeful theme. To end this video, I have to state I come from a culture with a supreme focus on the individual and with customs I don't participate in and that aren't very old anyway. I have the perspective of Kamina when it comes to those matters. So I want to say in plain English, I don't think tradition or culture is a bad thing. I don't call it a restriction to make it negative, but simply because I was being exceptionally literal for the point. One of my favorite recent experiences was getting to go to the Met Museum in New York. I loved it because I was standing there, I was engrossed in the culture of others completely all around me. I could see it, read about it, and exist within it for a moment. It was inspiring and shaped what I'll later research to develop my own stories and ideas. Culture is exceptionally valuable. All I'm stating here is that in kind and respectful ways, we should consider everything now and then. To truly finish, I'd like to ask you a favor. Comment your favorite personal customs or traditions on this video. Yes, because it really helps push the video to more people, and that does benefit me directly, but also because I want to see much more of what this world has to offer, and you all are part of that. I want to make myself more well-rounded to better myself and my analysis in the future, and you all have a great opportunity to help me do that, and we can get some good interaction there, because community is a good thing, and a lot of why I do this is community. But speaking of community, in the pinned comment with those important links, there's my Discord where we have a nice community going. Segues. It's also my Twitter, but most importantly my Patreon, where these lovely people above me support me right now, and if we can get that number to 25, I'll put a vote out to see what other monthly benefits we can get, maybe a Q&A, but I'll leave that for there and just say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon.